A few best practices when starting an open source project. The very first thing that you'll want to do is to include a Readme in your project so that people know what they're getting, and even more importantly, in a lot of cases, what they're not getting.
In the heat of development, it's often quite easy to forget to document what you're working on. This is something that often developers will forget when they're open sourcing projects, or assume they'll do later. Again, we want to make sure that the process for using these repos and sample apps is as smooth as possible for developers, and great documentation goes a long way to making that happen.
When I write documentation, sometimes it's not only for the end user. Sometimes it's actually for me as well, so I can actually understand a little better how I want to frame certain things. I'll go back and look at the API and I'll see, well, it doesn't really make sense when you put it all together, when you see it all in one place. So it's not just for the consumer, it's also for me.
Another good tip is to have issue templates and pull request templates, especially on GitHub. It allows people to at least know that your project has some processes that they should follow.
Please add a license to your repository. If you don't add a license, then it's not really open source. So the copyright will be assumed to be to you or to the company that you work for, and people will not be able to use your software.
Don't ignore people who are interested in using your library or contributing to your libraries. We don't want to have abandonware.
The other thing is you really want to start asking for contributors right away. You want people to be welcomed into your community, and you want to use that in order to build the community. Because someday you may want to move on to something else, and if you build up a healthy stable of committers and maintainers, then you'll be able to do that without the project collapsing underneath its own weight.
So I think it's important when contributing to an open source project to maybe recognize that there are a lot of people working on it are working part-time or are volunteers. They're dealing with a really large community often, and what's the best way that you can fit into their workflow?
So I think one of the really big things to attract contributors to your project is to have really good tests. When I go to contribute, I want to be able to be confident that my contribution adds to it without breaking what's already there. So having a good test suite that's easy to run, that I don't have to wait a long time for, is just a really important thing.
Use tools like Travis and AppVoyeur. They allow you to run your tests on every commit as well as incoming pull requests. And that ensures that you don't have any regressions in your code base.
You get a huge amount of power and excitement and energy building from working with a really large community base, but it's also a huge time investment that you have to be really prepared for managing the amount of feedback you're getting, the amount of questions you're getting.
The hardest part is managing the project on a day-to-day, communicating with the community, working in a public manner for everything that you do. If you want to design a feature, you have to design it in public. You need to get feedback on it. If you're planning to do a certain amount of work, you need to let everybody know so they don't do the same work at the same time. And I realize that's probably where a lot of the work comes in defining what's going to be a successful project and what's not. You don't want to make promises, and that's also just making sure that the community can trust you, right? And can trust that when you say you're going to deliver something on a certain date that it's going to be there, because again, you're working with a disparate, remote, fragmented team, and you need to have some rules that everybody can trust on.
Be transparent, be honest, be willing to share, and be willing to help others. In an open source world, you may not have the greatest idea out there, so somebody else may actually guide you, or together with other people you may discover new ideas. And I think that's the greatest thing about collaborating with others, the fact that you can learn from the community, the fact that you can be inspired, and the fact that you can build even greater things that you didn't even imagine building it.
But what you're really doing is you're changing the way that you build software. You're doing it in a collaborative way. You're inviting people to work on it with you. You're failing in public. You're showing people what you can do and also helping them come up to your level or bring you up to their level. So it's more, open source is more of a lifestyle, not a license.